Thanks you for joining us for lunch and staying here as we have this conversation together. I'm really excited to be joined on the stage here by Francesca Quick, Ryan LaPrade, and Claudette Green as we engage in a very special Black History edition of Tell Me Our Story, our 80th anniversary initiative. So I'm going to start this off, and we're going to ask each of them a few questions that we want everybody to answer, and then we're going to kind of engage in a conversation together. But I'd love to start with you, kind of just tell us how long you've been here, and share with us the story about how you came to hear about the church and how you first came to the church, and what it was like when you came. And Francesca, do you want to start us off?
I guess so.
Make sure you hold the mic all the way up. If you can.
Okay.
There you go.
My name is Francesca Quick. I know a lot of you all miss John Chandler. He was my CNI dog.
Yes.
He definitely served here as well. It's been 2 years now, but I've been a member here 12 years, and it seemed like time went by so fast. I came to know about the church as soon as I came to Charlotte. Like everywhere I went, people were saying, you need to go check out the church, Myers Park. And so I'm like, I'm a member of a church. And they was like, well, whenever you get time, just go check it out. So I'm like, oh God, you know. So I was just going through a battle of transition. As far as, I remember the bishop that I was under, she had stated, just get in a circle, and if that circle look like you, think like you need to change your circle. And I think I changed everything. Because I was like, it's time for me to go. I knew it was time for me to go because I didn't do anything. I didn't join anything in the church. And I didn't know where to go. I had given up on church. And I remember I said, wait, I didn't go check out that last church. I didn't go check out Myers Park. And so when I called the church, I think the first person I talked to was Reverend Gary Hudson. And he told me the direction. I said, well, do y'all have a bus to get to the church? And he was like, no, we don't have a bus. I said, well, what church don't have a van? And so he was like, well, they're for senior ministers and stuff, for the senior minister. And so I said, okay, well, I'll do my best getting there. And the first day at church, I came in, and I remember going into the sanctuary. The first person that I meet is Pastor Shoemaker, and he was playing the cello. And he came to me, he was like, well, you too early for church. Do you want to go to a Sunday school class? So I remember him picking out the first Sunday school class for me. And I was in that class. I think that was the right class for me. So right then we like hit it off. And what a wonderful preacher, visionary, very intentional. And I remember when I saw him on television leaving the Southern Baptist Convention. And I'm like, wow, this man got guts. And so I remember the church that I was at, we honored him. And he came there. And he came to the pulpit, and he was like, oh, my God, like, I've never been in a surrounding like this. Y'all are so excited. And he was like, I just feel like preaching. And I'm like, wow, this is too funny. And the same thing, I never knew that I would be here. I never knew that I would become a member. So that's how I came to this church. And I've been here ever since. And I thank you all for opening up your doors. I thank you all for the small things, the smiles, the pat on the shoulders, just all the love. Just for all the love that you all are giving me. Because when you talk about stories, I've been through a whole lot, going through many churches, and I just thank God that this was one church that I could really say that is home, because as I read the creed, and every other church I've been to, I read the creed, I could never see myself in that creed. But this is one place, as I read the creed, I can say, This is my church home. And I'm so godly proud because I knew that it was a place out there for me. And so I knew why people kept saying, you need to go. You need to go. So I thank God for you all. Thank you all for opening your doors. I know it looks strange at times. I know it looks odd. But that's the way of God. It's not always the way you want it to be. It's not always going to come wrapped up in a box together. But it's the way that God sees fit. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. And we're grateful you found us. Ryan, same question to you.
I can't go after that. Ryan LaPrade. I've been here at the church a little over 11 years, I think, coming up. But what's weird is I've been in Charlotte 27 years and had never really found a place that felt at home or felt comfortable with or whatever. So was in Charlotte for several years and was working, and it wasn't until I moved 2 blocks down the road, I know, and I was going to school across the street, so it's like, well, it's in the neighborhood, so why not stop by? And it was only because there was a special event going on with a minister from Riverside Baptist Church that was in town, and he was speaking Friday night up the street, and it was very weird. It's like, okay, so we'll just go and listen. And I went by myself, and then they had announced that he was going to be preaching here that Sunday. I'm like, they're going to let him preach in church on a Sunday? I was like, okay. So walked up, came in, listened to him, and the reception that he got from everybody who was here, and I had no idea the connection between Riverside Baptist and Myers Park, so I didn't know that there was already a relationship there. So I was like, that's why. I said that had to be the key. But it was the fact that they let somebody else preach in the pulpit that wasn't necessarily exactly what looked like everybody that was in the congregation. It looked like me. And I went, this is surprising. I would have never expected it. But that moved me and stuck with me for a long period of time. And I was going through trying to figure out what church did I want to be a part of. I did some shopping and went to a couple of churches uptown, Catholic, Episcopalian, and I was like, I've got to find something. Something was missing, and I didn't know what it was. And so I was like, okay, so I put it off, didn't think about it. And it wasn't until friends of ours, we were on vacation, we were talking about religion just in general, and it was talking about my background and where I grew up and everything. And they were like, well, have you ever thought about coming to Myers Park and I was like, yeah, I came a couple times and I heard the minister. They're like, no, you need to come. I was like, why? They're like, they are a gay couple, interracial couple. I'm gay, interracial marriage. And I was like, well, why would I want to? Surely you all do not want us to come to this church, right? There's no way. There's a catch here. There's something going on. I know. And they're like, no, really, truly, come back or come visit. I came to visit, started meeting people, and I just haven't left. There was always something going on, and there's always a reason that somebody finds a way to put their hooks in me and keep me here. Find a way. We know we can put you to work. There's something we can do. There's something you can do. I've got something for you. I've got a plan for you. I know. So, and I'm gullible, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure. I'm like, oh yeah, we can take on the world. There's so many things. And that's what spoke to me. There were so many things that I questioned just about religion in general, and we weren't allowed to question in the church or in the organization that I grew up in. So that spoke volumes. I'm like, wait a minute, I can actually speak back to the preacher and tell him, I don't understand. I was like, I don't agree with that, and you guys are okay with this, right? Really? And I'm gay, right? And you're not. Yes, we love that. We want you to be who you are. Come as you are. Be present. Sure, okay. And it's been the truth. I can confidently walk in the halls of this church, in any room, wherever. That's never a question. It's never about that. It's not about who I am. or what I'm showing. It's you as the individual. That's what everybody appreciates. And the fact that somebody came up to me last fall and said, and it was one of the members of the church, and they said, I'm old enough to be your parent, but I'm telling you this, I would be extremely proud to call you my son. I am not a very emotional person, but I almost lost it standing out on the patio, and I couldn't believe that they were willing to say that to me. It meant the world. And I was able to get through some, hard stuff and everything, but it was just so moving to think that somebody who, we hadn't really known each other very long, but was willing to say that to me and welcome my partner, and just, it was never any question. So that's why I'm here.
All right, amen. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
I know you don't want to hear from me after all that. So I'm the baby of the group. My family and I, we've only been here now for 5 years, but it seems much longer than that. We have been through a lot with this church, and my family and I are forever grateful that we have found Myers Park. So how did we come to Myers Park? So we were at a predominantly white church prior to coming to Myers Park, and we realized at the time that our child, Devin, whom I'm sure all of you know by now, was having a difficult time at the church we were attending, and so we wanted to find a church that we could all feel welcomed and affirmed. And so our first quest took us to Myers Park. I still remember that day vividly. It was during the summer, and a certain pastor who is sitting in our audience was on sabbatical. And we came to church, and the service was great, the sermon was great. But the thing that held us and gave us a hook was that the pastor, Ben, was willing to have the congregation question him about his sermon afterwards. That would not have happened in any of the churches we attended. And so that really spoke volumes to me personally during that time. But we said, it's great, but let's go somewhere else. Let's look around a little bit more, make sure this is really what we wanted. So we went to 4 other churches, and we narrowed it down to 2. It was Myers Park and another church. And one was like, if we could take the music from that church and bring it to Myers Park, that would be a great combination. But we ended up staying at Myers Park because, the sermons spoke volumes to us. I think we learned a lot. Our child, Devin, was able to grow here. Devin was able to put on a program here that the church just was so fundamental in seeing him succeeding with that, and they're also excited again to host that again this year, and he's looking forward to that. When Devin called me one day, he was so excited because he said to me, guess who's going to be on my panel? It's going to be Ben. And I'm like, okay, that must be nice, So this church has been meant so much to my family and I, and we'll just be forever grateful. We've been through a lot of ups and downs, and happy times and sad times, and I'm sure some of that will probably come out by the questions Ben will ask. But we're just forever grateful that we found Myers Park. Myers Park has been a blessing to our family. We have found a community here at Myers Park. And so I'm just grateful to see how much the church is growing, how much the church is involved with racial justice and LGBTQ justice and environmental justice and all the things that we've been involved in. And I'll just be forever grateful that we found you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to work our way back down this direction, Claudette. So we're back to you again. And I wonder if you could share, you kind of hinted at this a little bit. What are the biggest differences between Myers Park and the church you were raised in as a child?
Wow. So I felt I was kind of back in that church today, actually. But in a good way, in that way. Some of the biggest differences between the church I grew up in. So I grew up in an apostolic faith, and we were kind of told what we could wear and not wear. So if you were not married, you would never know what a ring looks like. Going back to what you could wear. So the first time I went to a church that I actually wore pants, I thought for sure that I was going to be knocked down that day, like Ananias and Sapphira were. So we could not wear pants to church or anywhere for that matter. The other thing was that questioning the Bible or questioning the pastor was just unheard of. So I remember a time as a youth, and the youth pastor would say, when you feel urges as a young person, you need to just pray about it, and you couldn't question that, you couldn't question, well, my prayer wasn't working or something, so they were just, we were not allowed to drink wine or any alcohol for that matter, although I know the pastors probably did that behind doors. But that's what they were telling us in public. Another thing, too, with the church that I grew up in was that, there was nothing about searching for the poor and the downtrodden and those who were less fortunate. It was the sermon on giving was always something that you do, but there was not about sharing with others. And the last thing I'll talk about is a big difference is that the churches that I grew up in, so it was that there was no one who went to seminary. Somebody just started a church. And from that, so then you can imagine then the kind of messages that were being preached is that somebody tells somebody something and somebody tells somebody something. So nothing was informed. So that's some of the biggest differences.
Thank you. Brian?
The biggest difference for me, just right off the bat, so I was raised Jehovah's Witness. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, when you drop that, they're like, what? So I guess the easiest way to explain it is very evangelical, very restrictive, and it's supposedly Bible-based, and that whatever the Bible says is gospel. There is no veering from it. There is no questioning anything, and very strict about it. So coming up, and it's like, well, and of course, I'm the oldest of 4 children, so a lot of pressure to be the example for everybody. I was the first grandchild of several, blah blah blah. So there was a lot of pressure in moving forward and towards following the family lineage, et cetera, in this particular organization. So trying to figure out or question and figure out who I was, where I fit in the broader scheme of things, and the structure of and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more, about a predominantly white organization versus predominantly black organization. I was raised, and it was a mixed group, but it was very white-centric, for lack of a better term. And so everything was very, go this way. So you really didn't, quote-unquote, see color, but you could just tell as you were talking to different people, and the way you were supposed to present yourself was to be a certain way in order to include and bring people into the organization. So coming here or visiting other churches and just getting exposed to there is something else outside. This isn't the one and truly only religion. There are other things. It was like mind-blowing. And that's what I was just like trying to take it all in, trying to learn everything from a lot of different areas. So that's what I enjoyed so much about this church, is the fact that you can learn something that's not in your wheelhouse. People are learned and scholared, and that they do have, backgrounds in something, and it's just not, well, I feel like this, so I'm going to talk about this, and I'll find a scripture that'll be able to support it, and that's what's coming down from the higher ups. So I like the autonomy for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Well, my experience, I grew up Pentecostal holiness, so it's way different. I think someone had saw me. They was like, "Why are you going to that church? They're not making no noise." And so I'm like, you know. But I had to learn the difference of having joy. I had to learn the difference in praising God, the different ways, because what I had to learn was it was more than one way, because I was seeing these preachers very charismatic, saying different things, but they was preaching hate. You know, I saw them discourage people, you know, so I'm looking like, you know, is this a place for you? This is not a love. This is not of God. So I had to learn how to shout, you know, in different places. And I learned that from David the best in the Psalms. You know, you can shout anywhere. And the message this morning was just so powerful. And we all have different ways of shouting or expressing ourselves. And, you know, the church that I grew up in, you know, they was just so fundamental in everything. I think every Sunday we talk about hell, you know, and I got tired of it, you know, because I'm like, well, why we come to church? We're wasting our time then if we already know we're going to hell. And, you know, people, and, you know, it was just like brainwash. Like the bishop or the pastor would say something and you couldn't challenge it. It was once said, that's all need to be said. And if you said anything out of turn, everybody is frowning on you. I remember in the church, the Sunday school teacher was preaching, and he was saying, he made a comment about those people in China. He was like, all of them going to burn in hell. They need to believe in Jesus Christ, and y'all need to get the scriptures over there. You know, and I was like, and I asked him, I said, so how do you know they're going to hell? And so he was like, because they don't believe in Jesus Christ. And my mind was just bigger than that. You know, I thank God for my mom because she knew that I was just different. And so she always gave me the time to travel up north, to travel to my aunt's places, and to do different things in school because that opened up my mind to see different things. And I had shared with them, I said, well, that's a different culture. You know, their belief system is different. So how can you say that they're going to hell? So he was like, well, I'm saying that because that's what the Bible said. And the Bible, as I was learned, is 100% in its accuracy. And I'm like, wow. So I got tired of battling. It was just a battle every Sunday because we'll have a great time. We'll shout all day, sweat all day. And then people will go back wounded, still hurting, you know, still in pain, still in debt, you know. And it was just really... it was a life lesson learned for me because as I got older, I started rebellion. I started like going to other churches. I started, and thank God for school because school was like an open for me that, you know, I was able to learn about different religions. And I'm just thinking like, oh, thank God, because I thought that was the only religion, you know. So it made me open up. And it made me open up to seek God for myself. And when I saw God for myself, I'm like, okay, God is not about this, you know, and making sure that I was in the right church home that was feeding me and my spirit. And that's when I could no longer go on mama religion, couldn't go to the church because my mama then went to the church. You know, I started choosing the place of worship for myself. You know, and now my mom's like, I'm just so proud of you because, you know, you're in a great place and you love it, you know, and that was so important because she knew, and I love God, you know, that was the most important thing to me. And I always had people keep telling me, oh, you're a transgender woman, you're going to bust hell wide open. And so, and people kept saying, so why are you not stating who you are? And I'm saying, my biggest thing was the fear of God. You know, because I love God that much. My relationship to God is more important than anything. So that was a major thing. And I think that the preachers know that. That's why they try to keep us bounded, you know, saying that religion, you know, is against your lifestyle, you know. So when I had to learn more about me and learn where God included me, that's when I learned that God has a purpose and God has a special love for me. That's something that you just have to know yourself, and you have to believe in God and trust that there's something bigger and better out there for you. And that's what I did. And thank God that when I came to Charlotte, I was at another church. I mean, they were gay affirming, lesbian, everything. But I think where they was missing, it was more about their sexuality and identity than about worshiping. It wasn't about helping people. So I'm like, I already know who I am. Like, I need to know, like, what are we going to do? I mean, are we helping out people? Are we doing mission work? You know, they was just still had people there still stuck and struggling just within their sexuality. And it was just like a fundamental church that I came from. So I had to leave that church that said they was free and really wasn't free. So the major thing with the old church is the difference here is that, you know, they had many offerings, more than this. They had a lot of offerings taken up. They used to have prayer lines. They used to have, well, we used to call it the moaning bench. And they would say, so the people.
Bench. You said bench.
Yeah, bench. Not bench.
Bench. Get your mind out. Go.
Yeah, bench. So that was for the people who, quote unquote, is not clean. So they will call themselves, because I had to go one time, because when they found out that I had this thing for men, oh, you got a demon inside of you, we're going to pray this out of you, we're going to put you all this oil. And I like that testimony, because I tell people it still didn't work. Because it's not about the power of what you think of, who you are, and what you believe your God is created of. You know, the same God that created you definitely created me. So it was a lesson learned, because I tell people you don't have to do all that. You know, be yourself, be who you are, be who God have called you to be. So it's a major difference. But one thing I can say I love about this church is, like, if I don't come Sunday morning, I don't get the next Sunday, oh, did you backslid? You know, and it's so funny, because back in the old church, that's the first thing they would say. And I remember I didn't come one Sunday, and this lady saw me, and she was like, well, we didn't see you in church. And I said, oh, here it come. And she said, well, we miss you. And I said, wow, that was a big difference from, oh, she done backslid, she's out there clubbing, you know. So it's real different that people see everybody in love here. You know, everything is not perfect, but I just like how the way people receive people and respect people, that it's not always about judging people, you know. So I really appreciate it. That's the difference, you know. Pretty much the same, the offering, the laying on hands, the preaching, style is different. But what I know why I'm still here is because of the word. And most of all, it's the love of the people, you know, and the work that Myers Park does. That's why I'm still here.
Thanks, Francesca. Ryan, we're going to start with you this time on this next question. Can you share a time when the church has been there for you and your family?
The one thing that comes to mind is in May 2020. There was a lot going on that time. And so prior to the events that unraveled besides the pandemic, we were already in the midst of it. We're all sitting at home. But I just want to back up. Before we even get to that particular event, I want to go back to the pilgrimage we did as a church to the Deep South. That was extremely, extremely moving for us to do the partnership between us and Mayfield Memorial, to go to all those historically black sites and have that moment together was powerful, beyond words. Something that stays with us to this day. So taking all of that in, knowing all that happened that, you know, during that trip, fast forward to May of 2020. there was, I don't even know where to begin. I'm still processing it, still going through it, still trying to figure it out. But over what I want to say, what the church was able to do from laity, from just general members to staff, was just being there. Not saying or trying to say the right things, just being there. Just, how are you doing? I mean, that's all I personally needed at the time, but to know, but they weren't trying to figure out, they weren't trying to guilt trip, they weren't trying to alleviate their own pain. They were really trying to understand, how can I help? And in such a way that it wasn't just a, let's get through this, let's get over it, because it's something that never really goes away. Unfortunately, we're still continuing to deal with the same issues month over month. So it's an understanding and taking the time to actually say, we need to step back and really learn and figure this out. How can we help each other as a community? To me, that's what has been most beneficial and appreciative of.
Thank you. Claudia?
Wow, where do I begin? The church has been there for me and my family on so many different occasions. I remember when my husband and I decided we were going to adopt twin girls, and it was shortly after we had started here at Myers Park. Soon into the adoption, we found out one of the girls had leukemia, and sadly, she was only here for a month before she passed away. And I must say the church has been our rock and our support from day one. Through the adoption and up to the very end, this church has been there for us. And we just cannot say how much we appreciate that, even to today. I didn't see that coming.
We got you.
The church has been so supportive. They have held our hands. They have cried with us. When Alicia was in the hospital, many meals that we didn't have to cook for months. There were people who were willing to give me a break so that I could go home and take a shower. And just the love and the support from everyone in this church was just amazing and continues to be amazing. Another time that really stood out for me was during the time as Devin was going through affirming surgery. We had to go all the way to Winston-Salem because we couldn't find someone in the area that was willing to complete his surgery. And our pastor said to us, "I will be there with you." And that was just another amazing moment for me. He held our hands while Devin was in surgery and talked with us and prayed with us and laughed with us so that we could take our mind off what Devin was going through. And I can't say how much I appreciate those moments. It's not only been sad times, it's been happy times, you know, like Maurice is retiring. And I reached out to the church and they were there, you know, they came to the retirement party and we just had a good time, you know, and it's those things that matters to me about Myers Park Baptist, because when they say that they're open to all, they're truly open to all. And I can't say how much I appreciate those moments. And then another time, which really meant a lot to me, was when I reached out as I was completing, as I was about to start my project for my DNP program, and I reached out to the church and proposed to Ben my idea of what my project was going to be about, and he was just ecstatic from day one when I proposed it to him. And with him and Carrie, they allowed me to get this project completed, and I must say that I'm now 73 days and counting to the end of my program.
Thank you, Claudette. Thank you. We're excited for you to finish that program. Francesca, how about you? A time the church has been there for you?
The biggest time, I think, was when I had my kidney transplant. And it's been now 8 years transplanted. And I am so relieved, I'm so happy. I have so much energy, so much life, so much joy. I remember when I came to the church, and then I was like, I think I told Reverend Gary, and he said, well, I'm part of the care team, so what you want to do with this? Because the church can help you out. I said, well, let's start a care team. And so just put it out there, and people just came out of nowhere to be part of the team. And we met sometimes at my house, sometimes we met here at church. It was a lot of work, but I thank God, I'm a planner. So my whole thing was 2 years out, let's go ahead and start planning. And thank God for Tilly Tice and her husband. When I first came to the church, she said, Francesca, she said, so who buys John dog food? I said, well, I do. She said, well, don't worry about it. I will take care of that. And I never had to buy John dog food again. Hospital bills, Tilly, or the church, they had it. And when we went through the transplant, some of the members are not even here now. I miss them so dearly, but some of them, David Woosley, it was Caroline Tate. It was a lot of people that don't see their faces that much, but definitely was part of the team, got us together, and then we planned so well. And I remember I went to Lake Norman to Camp Dogwood, and that was July 2014. And we was down at Camp Dogwood. I think I was there only one day. And so it was so funny because they called me and said, well, Francesca, I don't want you to get too excited, but we have a kidney. And I was like, okay. And so they said, well, just go ahead and prepare your people, just be on the way. I got one more person ahead of you. And so next thing I know, they called me back, said, yeah, come on in, because I think she was a Muslim, so she denied because she didn't want to do the transfer of the blood. And I was like, yes, So we came, and Tilly was home. It was just like everybody was in place. Nobody was out of place. Tilly said she just got home, had her shoes by the door. Her husband was there. They came to Camp Dogwood, got me, took me straight to the hospital. John's so smart. He knew what was going on before we did. The whole ride home, he just had his head laid on my shoulder. And he knew it was time to separate because I prepared him for that moment. I said, baby, we're going to have to separate. I don't know how long. Because I was thinking about like a month. And so my doctor looked at me. He said, no, you'll be back out. You'll be out in a week. And I'm like, for real? And he was like, yeah, you're in good shape. You're going to be good. And I remember having it July the 3rd, and then July the 4th the next day, because I remember the firecrackers going. And it's been 8 years successfully as I completed that transplant, and creatinine level is still doing great. And the only thing I can say, it was nothing but God, and the God sent people that has been here in my life. And I remember in the hospital every day somebody came from the church. Reverend Joe, he wore his visit out. And he would just be there. And I was like, Reverend Joe, why you didn't wake me up? He was like, no, you was resting pretty good. But it was just not even saying nothing, but just the presence the church being there, you just knew that they loved you. You knew that everybody cared. And I remember, I don't know what they call themselves, well, they used to always bring the cakes. They had the pound cake. So they brought like dinner, like almost every night, fresh fruit. I mean, I never could imagine that a church could be so loving and endearing the way that this church has been. And, you know, my mom was like, wow, like they doing all this, you know, and I was like, yeah. And so it's just been great and so wonderful, you know, having my transplant and then the church just being a part of that venture. And I think the touching time, I think for me, was also as I was going through transforming and I want to say transition, I ain't gonna say transforming, transitioning. And I remember I went to Reverend Pastor Shoemaker and he was like, well, you know, what's going on with you? You know, and I told him and he was like, okay, so we're gonna get some help. And then I think Reverend Joe had helped me find a doctor and ever since, it's been a wonderful path. And then the church was like, you know, forefronting everything. And I was just like, wow, you know, had got me a lawyer and settled the name change and everything. Something that I know it took me a while to save up to change. But I thank God that the church was like, no, we're going to do that for you because we believe in you. We believe in what you stand for and who you are. And that was something that I would never think a church would do. So the church has always been there for me in many occasions, you know. Even they didn't even know my father, and I think my father, when my father had passed, you know, had flowers at the door. They even started donated to the a scholarship at one of the colleges. And I was like, wow, you know, it was just so amazing because if my dad was still living, he would definitely be proud because he was a scholar himself because he was the valedictorian of his high school class. So it was just so amazing just how the way the church has just came through, you know, for my family and just being there. And I always made sure that I was, you know, I was good, you know, even with getting home. You know, do you have enough to get home? You sure? You know, and just making sure that everything's, that I didn't have to worry about different stuff that would have took my attention away from being present at that moment. So those was some of those occasions that I could say the church has been there for me and my family.
Thank you, Francesca. We got 2 questions left. One I want to talk about, obviously this is Black History Month, and it is an amazing thing that a predominantly and historically white congregation has begun to welcome and to become more diverse over the years. Goes all the way back to the 60s when we first said we were going to be open to all, closed to none, and we've continued that legacy all the way up to today. But it's not always easy to do that. It's not without its challenges. But I thought it would be helpful to hear from you. Maybe Claudette, we can start with you this time. What's it been like to be a black person in a predominantly white setting for you here at this church?
What, Ben? You didn't tell me I was black?
I'm so sorry to break it to you.
I'm sorry. So it has not been as difficult as many would believe, just because we have been, or I have been used to being in spaces where I am the only one. And so being a predominantly in the minority in Myers Park Baptist has not truly been as difficult as some may believe. So we also came from a predominantly white church. And one of the major difference between those 2 churches was that I actually feel like I'm a part of Myers Park. At that church, I never felt like I was a part, even though my husband was very involved and Devin was very involved in the church there. I never felt like I belonged there. Here at Myers Park, I do feel like I belong. Some of the challenges, though, as an African American in a predominantly white church, is sometimes not only skin color, but also remembering that there are diversity even within the Black community. So, so there is socioeconomic differences, there is, experiences that are different, and taking those into consideration sometimes when we talk about being Black is in itself a challenge. And so sometimes the things that are said sometimes people tend to believe that as a Black person, we're overly sensitive, but not understanding the reason why that is. So for example, when somebody said, oh, it's Black History Month, you should walk in front. That can be very stinging. And so just looking at our unconscious biases when we are around people in the minority or Black people can make a huge difference. Again, being a Black person in a predominantly white church, I also feel like I have privilege, right? Because there is some sense of wanting to be in community with me. However, there are also this other side of that where I wonder, why do you want to be in community with me, And so I have to, question sometimes that as well. And so sometimes when I'm asked to do something as a Black person and in a predominantly white church, I question myself, why am I being asked to do that? Is it just because you want a color, a representative out there, or is it truly that you want me as a part of the bigger table, to hear really what I have to say, or is it just for representation purposes? So.
That's great. Thank you. Ryan?
Ditto. I guess, seriously, ditto to a lot of what Claudette had said, because those are the same questions that I think about constantly. I joked with Ben when I was asked to be deacon chair, why? Yeah. For many reasons, but it's like, is it because we haven't had a Black person as a deacon chair in the history of the church? Granted, I mean, obviously I was the first one, but it's like, is that really the only reason why I'm being asked? But then again, we don't have a lot of representation in the church. So here's my opportunity. Here's the chance that I get to be the first. Let there be many more after me, men, women, whatever. So that is my reasoning for, or what my experience has been. Like I said, a lot of what Claudette said, I'm always questioning that. But at the same time, I want the community, and I want to make sure that there's that opportunity to intentionally get to know one another. Don't present to me, I want to get to know you just because I can have somebody on my list, check, I've got that friend, I've got this friend over here. And that's what but I've never really gotten that from the church. I just know that in my head, that's what I'm going through, what I'm thinking of. So I'm trying not to let that blind me or cause me to think about anybody else's intention. And it's hard because you're always thinking, well, how do I make sure that I do the right thing because I'm representing everybody who is the same color, right? I have to make sure I don't screw up, I don't say the wrong thing, that I don't step out of line. So that's a lot of pressure I personally internalize and try to make sure, we're on that right track. But that's what I'm used to doing for all of my life, both personally and professionally. So it's just one of those things. But I don't feel it as strongly as when I first initially came in, but I think a lot of it is just continuing to process that personally and being authentic with people and just saying, if something's not right, speak up and say something. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. Francesca?
Wow. Other people, I never think about it, until somebody bring it to my attention, like, why are you over there? Like, all those people are white. Like, and I'm like, well, I mean, I went to school, like, for 12 years with a lot of white people anyway, so it really wasn't a major difference. And then I don't look at color. I look at how the way you all think. What was the vision? What's the purpose? Who we helping? And so what I saw was a room of a group of people who wanted to help people, definitely my people, you know, and I'm like, wow, these people are talking about my people, how we can improve their lives. And I'm like, wow, okay, wow, some other people need to hear this that's not in the room, you know. So I never looked at, only time I probably thought about it is like when people bring it up. But I never look at it that way because I was looking at the way that the church think, the way they moved, the way they showed up, because they never said, hey, we're a church, predominantly white church. They never, quote unquote, say that. They just said, we're a group of people here to help, boom. And I was like, okay, I want to be part of something like that, you know, something that's positive, that's moving, you know. Yeah, for my people, as a black American, yes, I get it. Because they like, why are you going over there? You need to be supporting your own. Well, guess what? My own hurt me, you know. So I wanted to come over here to a place where people was actually doing something. You know, I saw mission work happening. I saw like the church already paid for, and we not just continue paying for this building that we never saw. You know, I saw people like, you know, loving that I never experienced, and I don't care how long I was in the church over there. So in that, you know, I can't really speak on color because I didn't see it. And, you know, when I came here, I just came on God's, you know, expectation is this place is for you. And anytime when you go on God's expectation, God is not by color, you know, it's a spirit. And that's what I went, you know, I'm not blinded, you know, by no way that, hey, yes, I'm black and all that, but I'm just saying that that's not what you all gave me, that you need to look at, you know. I've been to some places that it was like, you know you here, you know who's surrounding you. So it never was that when I walked in this church, you know, that it had me to question or go to questioning, oh, you're the only black person. You know, it never brought me to that point. What I think I enjoyed, and I'm still here, is because the action, the movement, and then you all been able to help out my people. That's what I love, and that's why I'm still here. And I remember Pastor Shoemaker and some of the classmates that I've been in class with, they said, and I said, I thank you all because I learned a whole lot. And one of the members, she said, well, Francesca, we learn a lot from you too, just from your presence being here. Because we don't see, you know, a lot of minorities that come here, you know. So, and a lot of people ask, say, well, were you scared? I'm like, no, because if you don't want to come to me, I'm coming to you. You know what I'm saying? So that's how the way I viewed it, because the most times, you know, we don't know how to reach out to someone. We don't know how to go across the color barrier. But it was never a barrier for me, because I'm like, well, if you don't speak, okay. If you do speak, fine. If you let me hang in, cool. But I always was a loner by myself. So it never bothers me if I'm in or not, because I know the real purpose of why I'm here at Myers Park. And I think that should be like the goal for everybody. It's not, oh, you know, I'm white, I'm black, I need to go to this church, because we've been separated enough. And I think separation have killed whole generations and have our kids questioning, you know, what should we do, or should we do this? And it really damaging people that are coming up now. And so my whole thing of it is, go where you feel led. Yeah, there's going to be, and what I do love about Myers Park, we talk about color. You know, we talk about color. We talk about the discomfort. Yeah, it's very uncomforting. But I thank God that we're at a place that we can talk about that and really don't have to be showing, you know, get real emotional, that we have to show anger or express anger, just try to get our point across. So, you know, we're doing the work. It's taken us a while, but I'm glad that the work has been done. Thank God for Pastor Ben coming, because I think he's one of the ministers that started this conversation, that we need to talk more about race. We need to talk about, let's talk about these black members that are part of our church. We need to hear what are their experiences, you know, because we always hear when Myers Park say, oh, we got some members, but like, do you really know who we are? Do you know what we really like? You know, you can't classify me just because I'm a black American. You know, all of us are different. We live different. You know, we think different. So, you know, I don't put nobody just because of their race all in one. I learn a person by a person as an individual. And that's why I came here. You know, like I said, it's not no big deal as being the only, you know, because I just learned that my mom always taught us, like, you are equal. You're just best as the next person. So I'm never intimidated when I walk in a room. So, you know, by having those strengths and those values that I was brought up in, it never came a question like, you're a part of this predominantly white church. So, no.
Thank you, Francesca.
You're welcome.
Last question, and we'll start with Ryan and move around. What are your biggest hopes and dreams for the future of Myers Park Baptist Church?
Biggest hopes and dreams is obviously to have the pews filled again in the sanctuary. Take the deacon hat off. But I mean, truthfully, continue to be the beacon in the broader community, continuing to be a place, a refuge, and a safe haven for whoever needs a place to come and to get spiritual fulfillment, get personal interaction and fulfillment. Whatever it is, we can seem to find a place for you here. And I think we need to continue to spread that knowledge and that education. But I want to also, you know, when we do that, that means that's going to be also what we're asking others to come join us. We're asking to change ourselves. So we have to be mindful of that when that occurs. But I think we're all on that journey. We're all expecting that to happen. We wouldn't be here if we didn't. So this is who we're called to be. This is what we've dreamed about for 80 plus years. I think we need to continue to live in that and accept what comes with that.
Thanks, Ryan. Claudette?
So I'll say ditto to Ryan. And for this question, I actually made some notes because I wanted to be intentional about this one. So recently I saw a sign that says, God is not calling us to go to church. He's calling us to be the church. And I think that is what my hope and aspiration would be for Myers Park, is for us to continue to be the church. Make the table bigger. So get to know someone who looks different from you, talk differently from you, someone of a lower socioeconomic status, and just get intentional about getting to know the people around you. A more diverse congregation and leaders, not just in terms of Black people, but other people of color. Partner with other Black-led organizations such as Charlotte Black Pride, Federation, the Freedom Center for Social Justice. Continue to embrace change. Change is the only thing that is constant. If we're not changing, we're dying. So continue to embrace that change. In addition, continue to be curious. Ask, is that what Jesus would do? Only be careful about who is answering that question and what lens you're looking through when you respond. One of the things I learned as I was completing my project for my DNP was about cultural humility. At the heart of cultural humility is a commitment to regulate a sense of cultural superiority over others. It requires respect for autonomy. Being able to say, I may not believe what you believe, but we can respect each other as a person is huge.
All right. Thank you, Claudette. Francesca, finish us out here. You'll be our last person. What are your hopes and dreams for the future of the church?
My hopes and dreams for this church is that that we continue to be like that beacon of light, but as a church, what we are seeking to be our greater selves, to be our better selves, and that's individually. Like, we come together as a team, but we're reaching that highest peak, whatever the highest peak in our life that is, that we are reaching. And that goes beyond what we think, what we know, even beyond what we want to even do. So there's no heights, no depths that this church can be able to go, you know, and also to continue to be humble, because we can still learn and move graciously, because we're always still looked at. And, you know, I have ears and I hear around the community, you know, everybody's always talking about Myers Park, and they put us up there. And my whole thing is, you know, that's great, that's wonderful, but let's be very graciously how we accept that. You know, that we walk humbly, that we always continue to learn. We always, you know, we don't know everything, but we're willing to know. And so I think that's what is going to continue to open doors, it's going to open lights. We are progressing right now because this is the most diverse, since I've been here, since the church has been, not just only with Black Americans. I'm talking about, you have more Hispanic, you have Chinese. I mean, you have different people that are coming, and people are, and not just in membership, but people who are coming here as a place to start their own ministry. So, you know, we are ministering in all kind of dynamics, and we are being like a mother, like a father, or just a parent to these people. Or we being ministered to, or we out there ministering to. So I'm just saying, you know, we don't know what that is, but my thing is always, you know, reaching and finding that peak, the highest peak in our life, you know, that thing that's going to make us happy on inside. And I can never imagine, you know, I would always be so curious when I hear Michael Jackson was sing the song Man in the Mirror, and every time he would say, and doesn't it feel real good? And he'd say, woo! And man, that just does something to me, because I realize it's not about the wealth that you have, but just by giving back to people. Yeah. You don't know how much rewarding that is on the inside of you. And it does make you feel good. So that we continue to be that church. No, not sit on no hill, not with the bright lights, but we continue to be that church, be mindful and being prayerful, and just continue to be the highest peak in our own personal lives, and not looking at competing with the next church, the next generation, but we continue to be ourselves, because that's what I think that has got us this far right here. And just stay open to learning. I think this is what's going to make this church an even greater church.
Thank you, Francesca. Let's give our panel a round of applause. Thank you all so much. We appreciate this. Thank you. Thank you all.